Right, last week we have done up to 20th slide of the fifth lesson, right? Somewhere here. Yes, I think we have done up to here, right? So there we talk about traditional organization chart and what are the disadvantages of traditional organization chart. So it seems no one is there, right? So here we say traditional organizational charts are often described as a vertical view of the organization. The department of functional groups within a department are referred to as silos, similar to the tall windowless plain silos one sees in a farming region. So it becomes kind of a silo thinking will be implemented right within the organization when you are having this vertical organization or traditional organization we have mentioned here, right? So this it's like for example, if you take these various departments, like right, we have marketing, we have manufacturing, we have sales, we have HRM, and so on and so forth. So what happens is this kind of a structure, right? This uh, this kind of a vertical organization structure. What happens? So we organize uh, the whole organization in department wise. So when it comes to the manufacturing or production department, they would say, so we are the since we are doing the production, so you people can sell it, right? When it comes to sales and marketing, people will say because of we do the sales, you people are supposed to earn back, so that they would have kind of a silo thinking, right? So they pretty much concern their own departments, but not as a whole the organization stage, right? So this is the biggest disadvantage we have in this kind of a traditional organization chart or the structure or the uh, vertical structure, right? So that here again we say when managers conceptualize their organizations as vertical organizations, they tend to manage in a vertical manner. They focus on who reports to whom and set goals for each group independent of the others. So that when it comes to marketing department, so pretty much concerned with the affairs of the marketing department. So they report to their head, perhaps the manager of the marketing, and they look after stuff within their department. Like they don't bother about the other functional areas like manufacturing, HRM, information system, or whatever, right? So as far as organization is concerned, when you really want to fulfill the customer expectation, obviously you have to work as a more holistic manner, like achieving the organizational objectives. But when they are having this kind of a silo thinking, right, referring only to their own department, it is somewhat difficult, right? So here we say they focus on who reports to whom and set goals for each group independent of the others. At the same time, silo thinking leads managers to focus on making their departments as efficient as possible without much regard to what's going on other silos. So silos in the sense, you know, that is kind of a big barrel, like. So when you get into this kind of a big barrel, what happens? You won't see who are in the other barrels, like, right? So that they would do the improvement with regard to their silos. That means their functional areas, their own departments, right? So they don't bother about the other departments, right? That is what we call silo thinking. So that is somewhat harmful for the organization to achieve the customer expectation, right? So that is not a good thing, right? And here we say that that's why we need the alternative. Here we talk about the alternative, right? Here we say the system we work for an organization. One alternative to conceptualizing the organization in terms of its departments and reporting relationships is to imagine an organization as a system that responds to input and generate output. So when we're having this system view of the organization, and again, when we come to the functional orientation of the organization, what happens is, do you have any information regarding on your input? Do you have any information regarding your production process? Do you have any information regarding your output or the relationship among your stakeholders? No, nothing as such. But you have only from the very top to the bottom. There is a structure, and there they have mentioned, okay, from the top, if you say chairman, managing director, okay, this manager, that manager, and so on, then the supervisors and the employees, likewise, you have when it comes to functional orientation. Nothing is right. You mentioned regarding your input or your suppliers. Nothing, not much of information regarding your customers or the production you do or any other stakeholder involved you your organization, right? So this is that's the biggest weakness of functional orientation. So that the alternative conceptualizing the organization in terms of its department and reporting relationship is to imagine an organization as a system that responds to input and generate output. So when it comes to the system view of the organization, what happens is we concern about our input and we concern about our process, what we are really doing within the organization, and we concern about our output or the end production or the service line, right? This view is often referred to as horizontal system view of the organization. Figure 3.2. Where to have this figure 3.2? Sorry, figure 3.4, right? That's in the slide number 22, right? Next one. This figure 3.4 illustrates a horizontal view of an organization. So that the system view, another name we can give it to horizontal, right? View of an organization. In this case, we provide very high level system view of the hypothetical restaurant called San Francisco Seafood. So here we will take an example, right? Hypothetical restaurant called San Francisco Seafood Restaurant, right? Here you would see, right? What do you find here? You have suppliers, right? On your left hand side, you have suppliers. Suppliers, they provide raw materials, right? When it comes to San Francisco Seafood, so that is the restaurant. So within that organization, right? These are the activities which take, right? So when you go to the restaurant, they seat the customer, they take the orders, they deliver meals and present the bill, right? That is the process within this restaurant premises, right? So once that process is completed, what happens? So you have the satisfied customer, right? Customer satisfaction, right? Once they go to the meal for a restaurant and once they finish it, so they are satisfied, right? So from customer point of view, right? So we can get the sales data and quality service control data from that thing, right? This information can be received for us, right? So this is, here rather than this functional orientation in this structure, right? Horizontal system or the system view of the organization would give us the information regarding our input, our process, and our output, as well as the information flows and the relationship we have with other stakeholders, right? So that is the difference between the functional orientation and this system view of the organization, or the traditional view and the system view of the organization, right? So when it comes to system view, here we say what do we say? System view of the organization. The organization illustrated in figure 3.2, the previous figure, right? we had a look, is at such a high level abstraction that it could be any organization, right? So we can apply the system view to any organization. Much that would have been added has been omitted to simplify the diagram. So much of information I have omitted because we want to simplify the diagram, right? The important thing to note is that this view provides us lots of information that we don't get from organization chart, right? So much of the information we would see in the system view won't give us from a traditional organization chart, right? First, it shows the customer, right? In the system view, you find your customers, right? And the products and the suppliers. Second, it shows how work actually occurs, right? What activities which occur within the organization. And third, it gives us idea of how things are connected and flow from one thing to another, right? How things are connected and how flow from one thing to another. Right? How raw material flow to meals and how data about customer satisfaction flow back to the organization, right? So these are pretty much the information that organization are expecting, right? So that's why the system view is important for any organization, right? Next, we have this organization diagrams are an extension of system diagrams that are modified so that can be used to describe the basic structure of an organization, right? By having these system diagrams that are modified and that they can be used to describe the basic structure of an organization, the relationship of the organization to its external environment and relationship among the departmental units within the organization, right? It gives us a complete picture of the organization, right? How things are organized within the organization, what kind of relationship we are having the external parties, right? And again, and the relationship among the departmental units within the organization. So what kind of a relationship you are having as an organization, units within the organization also provided by this kind of a system diagram. In some cases, they may also show the basic processes used by the organization, how those processes relate to the basic departmental units. So furthermore, they may show us how what are these processes within the organization and how these different processes relate to different departments within the organization as well, right? Here you have an organization diagram that emphasizes external relationships. You know that any organization you take, right, they don't, perform in a vacuum, right? So they have the relationship with the environment, right? So especially here, the Ramma and Beck emphasize the external relationship, right? So on the top you would see the general environmental influences, right? Local and global economies, government regulations and social trends, right? You have pretty much more than right? You say pestal, political, economic, social, environmental, right? Legal and so on and so forth, right? There are so many external influences to the organization, right? So that on the very bottom, you find the competition. Where this competition comes from? That comes from our competitors, right? So in the middle, you find your organization, right? And on your left hand side, what you find? All these are inputs, right? So for example, for the production you need human labor or the employees, right? For that, who is providing the labor? The people, right? You people, the labor is we take from labor market, right? When it comes to capital, capital is utmost important for us to develop and run our business, right? We get the capital from where? The capital market, right? Stock exchange, right? Sometimes we borrow loans, right? We raise capital, various other means, like, right? So then again, we have the technology. Where do we get the technology? Here they say research community. People are doing never, I mean the continuous researches on new technologies, right? So that we take the new technology from the research community. And the material from our suppliers, or here they say vendors, right? So with this, so input comes from labor market, capital market, research community, and the vendor, right? So your organization, within your organization, you organize your production process in such a manner. It may be a production of a good or a offering a service line, right? So that there may be so many different value-adding activities within your organization, from raw material to the finished product, right? So that on your right hand side, what do you find? You have your customers as well as your shareholders. Why shareholders are important? Because they are the people who owns your business, huh? Right? Information and evidence goes to whom? Shareholders, right? So if you are, you know that if you are listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange, so that is owned by the shareholders of the owners of that company, the shareholders of that company, like, right? So annually these people are getting dividends and all other information with regard to their operation, right? They issue it through a annual report, like, right? Shareholders get it. Then again we have the customers. So what kind of information they would receive? The marketing contacts, sales contacts, right? So whatever the product you do within the organization or the service you offer should ultimately sell it to the customer. Customers comes from where? They come from the market, right? So they, as customers and the market, so they give the organization orders. So they, whatever the products they need, whatever the service they require, they communicate it to you, right? Your organization. And then what happens from your end, once you get the order, then you make the products within the organization and you deliver the finished product, right? And again, as far as your competitors are concerned, so they also have similar input like you, right? From the labor market, capital market, research community, vendors, and all these inputs are there. So they do the similar kind of product, right? Since they are your competitors. So they produce competitive product that again goes to the market and your customers, right? So this is the diagram emphasized by diagram done by Ramla and Beck, emphasizing external relationship of the organization, right? Why this is important for us? Here we say, right? When it comes to organization, right, this general environmental influence is pretty much important, right? Otherwise, what happens by if you ignore this environmental changes, what happens is you will be out of your business after some time. If you are not sensitive to the technology changes or the technology advancement or the changes in the political arena, and what happens in the economy if you don't concern, and again what are the changing factors in the demography or the economies or income changes of the people. So everything, every aspect of it, you have to be pretty much concerned, right? You must be sensitive to these changes, right? If you really want to be in the market, right? So here we say the shaded square in the center represent the organization, the early figure, right? In this initial version of the diagram, we don't show here, right? We don't show any internal details, right? So as far as your organization is in, that is, you won't find that much of information as this diagram shows us. Since we want to focus on the input and output of the organization, right? So in this diagram, we want to focus your attention on the input and output of the organization, so that we don't show any internal details, right? Suppliers of all kinds, including vendors who supply materials, research organizations that supply new technology, capital market that supply money, and labor market that supply employees are shown on the left of the business, right? In later diagrams, to simplify the things, we will just have a single tall rectangle to left of the organization box and label it resources of supply. So later on, they would simplify this version by referring them over as resources or the suppliers, right? Customers and shareholders, right? When it comes to this general environmental influence, customers and shareholders are listed on the right, right? Customers and shareholders are listed on the right. Customers order and receive products and services. Shareholders buy stock and receive information and dividends, right? Customers order and receive products and services. But basically, in any organization, you name it, it happens, right? When customer make a request and they receive the products and the services. Then shareholders buy stock, right? And receive information on dividends, right? If you buy any stock in the Colombo Stock Exchange annually, you will get all the information. And time to time, you may get log into CSC website, and still you have the information, right? Current prices, the number of shares sold, and all the reports they have submitted for various number of shares, everything is there, right, for shareholders. In other versions of the organization diagram, we will often place a single rectangle to right of the organization box labeled customers and market, right? Later, in the next diagram, they would simplify it. Rather than saying customers, they would term it as customers or market to further simplify the diagram. Below the company box, we have rectangles for competitors, right? So next to your organization, they have this rectangle for competitors. Companies that compete with the organization for inputs from suppliers for your customers and for customers. Right? Who are the competitors? The similar organization like ours who are competing for our inputs and our customers, right? If the organization we are describing has one or few major competitors, we may list them in the separate box to help focus everyone on the nature of the competition. So if the competition is low, so that means limited number of the competitors, we can name this, right? Since there are few competitors. Above the company box, we have rectangle that includes more generic environmental impact on the organization. Above the company box, we have the rectangle that includes more generic environmental impact on the organization. On the top of it, right, you find this general environmental influence. So I have mentioned earlier, right? But define. You have political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal, right? Right? These are the factors we have to concentrate on. These could include government regulation, changes in the economic, changes in popular taste. These things we have to consider. So I give you one example. You know that sometimes back, not sometimes, right? More than 30 years, somewhere 1980s, I think 1980s and 90s. Like we had one company called Lanka Celtel, right? So in late 1980s and start of 1990s, so this company called Celtel Lanka, they introduced very first mobile phones in the country, right? Or ඉස්සර තිබ්බා වගේ අර gadol කැටේ type එකේ ඒවා, right? So they had one option is similar to a modern day brick, right? The gadol කැටයක් වගේ size එකේ phone එක ලොකුයි, right? The starting of the mobile. So and again they had a kind of other variation like the fixed line. Again that is I mean the radio signals work through this radio signals, like so they have a that typical antenna we have at our home. That kind of antenna is the setup, and wire comes in and we connect it to device, and that's how they make the call, right? So they introduced these devices in 1980. So all these are analog phones, right? Analog phones. So they thought that was the only company at that time in Sri Lanka, right? In late 1980s and 90s. So that they had the biggest market share and they earn quite a good profit at that time, and they were very comfortable in the market. Lanka Celtel Lanka, if you want, right? And in 1990, so there all of a sudden the small competitor came in, right? They call themselves Dialog, right? But Dialog people, they did not have they only concentrate on digital devices, right? So while the Celtel Lanka concentrating on analog phones, Dialog people started with digital devices, digital mobile phones. Why? They knew that one day this market will be flooded with these digital devices or the digital mobile phones, because we have millions of expatriates in various other countries. On their return, what these people do is they bring a mobile phone or 2 or 3 or 5, whatever the number. So gradually this country was flooded with the digital mobile phone. But unfortunately, Celtel Lanka, they didn't change. They didn't have any clue what's really going on in the environment, and they were not really concentrated on technological changes, social changes, or economical change. They were stuck with their analog phones. After 5-10 years time, the analog phones are out of the market, and we don't find any more Celtel Lanka in the country. We have only Dialog. So that as an organization, what you have to do is you have to be very sensitive to these external environmental factors, right? Or here they say generic environmental impact on the business. This could include government regulation, changes in the economy, changes in the popular taste, etc. Right? So these things are important. Then let's take then within the organization, right? So we talk about the input, output, and the external environment. Now we will come to the organization. So that within the organization, so any organization, maybe a organization which do a finished product or the service, they have value chain, right? Here we say we defined the idea of value chain in chapter 1 and referred it again chapter 2. So we have discussed in extensive manner in our previous lesson, chapter 1 and chapter 2, what this value chain is all about. right? So I am not going into that again. It's a powerful concept and should be used to focus attention on the fact that all the processes that go into making and selling the products line ought to be considered as a part of as a whole. If you remember, you have you should remember these primary activities and the secondary activities, and what include in the primary activities, you know, and what they include in the secondary activities, right? So that in that regard, right here we say the process that going to making and selling product line ought to be considered as a part of a whole. So every aspect of it, of the value chain, ultimately taken into consideration when you are selling your product, right? So all these added values put together with your markup, and you set the selling price, right? Unfortunately, it is easier to talk about value chain than to define it in many specific contexts, right? So it is very easy for us to talk about the value chain, right? We can draw a diagram and we can say these are the primary activity, these are the secondary activities, and this is how we add value, and it is easy for us to explain. But to define it in any specific context is not that so, right? And here we take an example from Dell computers, right? You know Dell? Yeah, one of the most reputed computer manufacturers, especially the laptop, not only laptop, there are various other computers they manufacture, right? So that when it comes to Dell, here we say one could argue that Dell is simply a design and marketing organization, that laptop manufacturing is not one of its core processes, but Dell is generally classified as a computer equipment manufacturer, and Dell exerts significant control over the processes it has outsourced. On the other hand, Dell does not have a laptop manufacturing function or the uh, VP on laptop manufacturing with day-to-day control of computer assembly. So even though we talk about the Dell computer, we talk about the brand, so though we talk about the various machines they do, in actual sense, they don't manufacture any computers, right? So they mainly pretty much they concentrate on marketing and sales, right? And the new product development. But manufacturing and delivery and the service is outsourced to other organizations, right? Here we say that role is performed by an individual working for an outsourcer. More and more companies are trying to think about how a value chain works if significant operational processes are controlled by external organizations. Put a different way, organizations are beginning to talk about value chains that extend beyond the traditional boundaries of the organization. Let's have a look. So here in this diagram, the laptop value chain of Dell computer, right? So what are the primary activities? Marketing, product development, and sales, right? Supportive activities, management, HR, IT, finance, and accounting, right? So they mainly do new product development and market, and then sales related activities to the customer. But in actual sense, what happens is manufacturing and delivery and the services of these computers are done by some other organization, right? So that this outsourcer, the outsource organization will manufacture and delivery the product to customer, and they provide the related services, right? So these are their primary activities in the value chain. And what are secondary activities of the outsourcers? Management, HR, IT, finance, and accounting, right? So this is the value chain of Dell computer, and it's outsourced companies. So here in the next diagram you will see uh, previously we discussed it, right? Generic environmental influences, right? And within the organization, you have the organization value chain. On the left hand side, you have inputs from various suppliers, right? Labor market, capital market, research community vendors, right? On your right hand side, you have these customers and the shareholders, right? And within your organization, here in this particular case, right? They have mentioned your organization and value chain. On the top, you have the management and these different functional areas like engineering, production, finance, marketing, and sales, right? And there are two value chains here, right? On the bottom, you have the competition. Here you say an organization diagram of company with two value chains. So this is the organization with two value chains, and there may be so many different value chains in an organization, like, right? Why is that so? So they may involve with various different productions, right? Here you have. So when it comes to this organization X, this widget value chain, right? Here you have create new product, right? When customer requests a new product, they create a new product, right? Then market and sell product is another value chain, right? So marketing contacts and sales contacts, and the order fulfillment, marketing and sales, right? So yet another process. Then we have make and delivery product. Yet again another process, right? Products and services delivered from one end and support request line, right? Here say an organization diagram for specific value chain with three core processes identified. Here in this particular diagram we identify three core processes. What are the three core processes? Create new products, market and sell products is another process, make and deliver is another process line, right? So this is all we have to discuss in lesson 5, right? So we have done it. So then next we have to take lesson 6.